Oh, I lost your video.
Good. You're good.
The audio.
You're good? Can you hear me?
No, I lost your audio.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, folks. I had a little technical difficulty here. Anyway, as far as the waking up every morning, I have an issue sometimes with getting motivated. And then when the show starts, I get to hear that fight song every single week, and it just jazzes me up. And I'm so grateful I'm able to listen to that opening there. Before I start the show, I'm going to bring on my guest. My name is Tom Russell. I'm your host for Life Without Limits. And I want to thank all of you, my audience worldwide, that we're able to bring so many interesting stories with so many different guests that share values that I have. And a lot of the values that I have are being courageous and dealing with issues in their lives that they become victorious. But before I get into that, just a little things I want to just address, making sure that everyone knows if they are interested in being a fan for my show, you can go to lifewithoutlimitsshow.com. That's lifewithoutlimitsshow.com, and you'll be able to either you can get my audio book. And for my first book, which was Finding Your True North, A Bully Teen's Journey of Hope, and my second book, which was on homelessness, and that's Nowhere Man. And I'm really, really, really proud of that. And also, if at some point you don't get a chance to listen to my show and you want to go back, you can either catch me on iHeartRadio, or you can become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. And you can watch any of the videos that I have, and those are fun. Those are fun to watch. Not so much for me when I actually have to watch me talk on YouTube, because a lot of people we critique ourselves, right? And so that's what I do, but I try not to do that very often. And lastly, I want to make sure that everyone knows that you can still ask questions for me or my guests, and I want to find out what you guys are thinking. So don't hesitate to ask questions, and send them to me through the station, to W4WN, and then I could send the questions back to the guest, and the guest will send those answers back, and I will respond to them and read them on the next live show that I have. So please don't hesitate. And I've had a lot of listeners who've been with me for a long time, and they've asked a lot of incredible, loving questions. And I can't even express how much you guys mean to me. It means so much to me. So let's go on with the show. Over the past, it's been, I don't know, it's almost 2.5 years now, I think. I've talked about so many different subjects, and though I don't consider myself what you consider like a controversial radio host, I do consider bringing up subject matters that brings up many issues of social significance that really matter. And tonight is one of those shows. And what I really love about my program is I get to invite these guests who are willing to share their stories of courage and perseverance, and they've overcome so many challenges in their life. And my guest tonight is Morrigan. Is it Balek or Balek?
Balek.
Balek. Okay. All right. So when you hear the story, I'm hoping all of you can listen with an open mind and embrace the insights that you're all going to hear. And so let's get started. Morgan, thanks so much for coming on my show. It's I've been looking forward to it. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah. So let's get into your story, because I didn't say exactly what we're going to talk about. So we'll let my audience follow along as we talk. But we're going to start at the beginning with your family life, and you were the fourth brother when you were born in 1955, and your dad was kind of up there in the age. What kind of relationship did you have with him?
Well, I had more of a relationship with my dad where he was more like a grandfather, although I had no real perception of what a dad would be until I got older and saw how kids my own age interacted with their own dads, playing sports and stuff. By that time, he was already, by the time I was ready to play sports, he was already in his 60s. So he was, and I always felt like that was like a disadvantage, but like a lot of things in life, you gain something and you lose something with every situation. And what I didn't get from him as far as active play and things like that, I did get a lot of imparted wisdom from a man who was born before airplanes and who passed after the space shuttles, and so he had a very, very broad perspective. He was also never educated formally, but he was the type of a man that constantly had something in his hands reading. He was constantly reading something. He was a self-taught geologist, so he was a very interesting man.
So he was, what was he, 50 something when you were born?
He was about 55 when I was born, and I was born in 55. So
that's hard to fathom.
He doesn't know when he was born, so it's a guesstimation.
Oh, okay, all right. But it's one of those things. Okay, I got you. Now let's move forward a little bit, because when you were 4 years old, you began to feel like you were somewhat different. Can you explain?
Well, I started envisioning myself as a girl, and I think primarily it was a big combination of different circumstances. I think that there was some organic circumstances from chemical pollution and stuff, which is which could be a show in and of itself. But for the most part, what happened was there was all the girls in our neighborhood were on one side of the street, and all the boys were on the other side, and I found myself frequently on the other side of the street. I probably because of the nature of male interactions at that age. It's very competitive. Very try to intimidate the other kids and stuff. And I just felt a lot more at ease playing girl games than I did boy games. There was a lot more social. There was a much greater social aspect to girls' interactions than there was boys.
How did the other boys react when you would want to spend more time over there?
They were kind of glad.
Why is that?
Because I was at that point, I was probably the youngest of four, and I was the baby of the family. I got a lot of attention from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of liked to hold the babe until the next babe came along, and then that babe became the favorite, which we'll discuss later in the story.
Actually, we can go to that now, because I want to find out what happened with your relationship with your dad after the new baby came.
Well, the thing about it is there was my three older brothers were born in fairly quick succession. Mm-hmm. And then there was a little break, and then I was born. And they were like when I was born, they were like 6, 4, and 3. And so, when the second to oldest was born, the oldest was too young to really realize that he was being displaced, and even more so with the third and the second. When I came along, there was not much of a recognition of being displaced by the third brother. He was only 3 years old, 2.5 years old. When my younger brother was born, I was a good 5.5, 6 years old. And I had total awareness of the fact that my father had just dropped me for the younger brother. And, we had a special relationship. We were born in the same week of February, and we would always celebrate birthdays together. And, I was his little Choctaw Indian, chip off the old block, you name it, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought I was special, but my being the youngest was what made me special. So I don't want to. Okay.
Oh, sorry. You had talked about, because we had a discussion before this about the situation with Barbie dolls and GI Joes. Can you explain that scenario there?
Yeah. Well, I was playing with some of the kids across the street, and we were playing with the Barbie dolls, and my mom saw it, and I had already started gravitating towards gender dysphoria. And at that
What is
point,
that? Can you explain that?
gender dysphoria is when your brain is kind of at odds with what you're born gender wise. When we're assigned, we live in a binary culture, binary society, as far as it's boys or girls, and there's for a long time there was really no in between. Well, there's a whole lot that's in between. Whether you want to, the culture says male and female. Well, there's a whole lot psychologically, and there's a whole lot physiologically too, that disputes that. However, I started getting into my mother's clothing and stuff like that. We were no brothers, and I just kind of started self-actualizing as a girl. I didn't want to be a boy, I did not want to be a boy. It was just that simple. I didn't like the way boys interact. I didn't like the way they played, and and I was much more happier and much more at ease. So I was playing with the Barbie dolls, and she saw that, and she put the kibosh on it. She said no, and later on, when I was, the situation would come up in the family every couple of years where I'd start acting out, and they'd suppress it and shame me into doing. So I would get, into boy stuff, tanks and bombs and guns and, and football and, just everything that a young boy in the 60s would do. And so I wanted a GI Joe like all my friends had, and my mom said, no child of mine will be playing with dolls, and that kind of gives you an insight into how my earlier forays into being a gender outlaw impacted her, and the rest of the family.
Well, it had to be confusing, and think about the culture back then. I mean, it wasn't
exactly
accepted. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, nobody knew anything about it. I mean, I don't think I remember when I was in elementary school and I first heard the story about Christine Jorgensen, and I was like, what? That can really happen? And it's like, then you start thinking. But
what's the story?
Yeah, it wasn't part of the culture.
What's the story of Christine Jorgensen?
Well, she was an American GI in World War II. And after the war, she went over to Denmark, where she had sexual reassignment surgery and became a woman. She went from Chris to Christine. And it was a big story,
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
There was 1950s, and it was a whole new world,
Now, your parents.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
When you think about the culture and the time and what everybody went through during World War II, during that period, the whole planet was in upheaval, and for people to come home and be a little bit more introspective and question reality it's not an unnatural thing.
Yeah.
You put it in that context.
Now, your parents, I mean, they were considerate about your proclivities by then. But didn't you say that they wanted to send you to military school in first grade?
Yeah, they did. They discussed it. with friends, with family friends and stuff. And one of the friends said, "Well, we had a problem, son, and we sent him off to military school, and the discipline really helped him a lot." And so they were talking about military school, and they said I'd have to get a haircut. Of course, we already had a butch,
All right.
and crew cut. And they said, and I said, "Really, military school?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Will I get to carry a gun?" And they're like, "Oh God, what are we dealing with?" so I did, obviously I didn't go to military school, but we did drive by it once.
Now, were they kind of hoping, because they already knew what your proclivities were at the time, were they just trying to, I don't know, toughen you up or make you more macho because you're in that environment?
Oh God, they did it more with shame. They just they suppressed my inclinations with shame. I remember when when I was getting ready to go to the first day of kindergarten, and I had gotten into my mom's dresser and had on her underclothes, and she saw, and she said, "Come here, I want to tuck your shirt in right." And so she reached, "Oh, what is this?" And she pulled up, and I said, and she goes, "Oh, so we'll put ribbons and bows, and we could put you in a dress to go to school." And she thought that would embarrass me. And I said, "Really?" And it's like, "Really?
Really? Yay.
As you would let me do that?"
Yeah.
And there again, she was like, "Oh God, I don't know what to do with this one, And so, yeah.
Now, as you got older, like in 50s and 60s and 70s, and particularly in the 60s, there was all this sexual freedom of expression and all that sort of stuff. Were you trying to still hide it? Like if you were ashamed, or you're just confused, right?
I was pretty confused. Yeah, I mean, I was a handsome young boy, in elementary school and in high school. I always felt different, though. I mean, for obvious reasons, I always felt different. But I was also someone who loved to have fun and be with people and stuff. So, I understood that when my parents were trying to suppress, this tendency, that they were trying to do it for my own benefit. I was conscious of that. And so, but, as you mature, and I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that when you reach puberty, things start changing and they get a little bit more complicated, and before it was gender, when I was a kid, it was just the simple boy versus girl type of thing, it was just that simple little nature. But after high school, when girls started looking like miniature women, and boys started, I mean, in junior high school, some guys are starting to grow beards, and so they were all sending out their little signals about, and I'm like, I'm not knowing what to do with anything, I was very popular. I was handsome. After many years afterwards, when I reconnected with several of my childhood friends and stuff, and they learned of my story, they were like, "Wow, I had a crush on you." And I'm like,
yeah.
Part of me said, "Why didn't I know about it?" Because I was kind of aloof. But on the other side of me was saying, another part of me was saying, "Boy, you were sure lucky, because that would have been so frustrating for you, because it was frustrating for me."
Yeah. Man, I just, Then obviously with you talked about your mother and father, but how did your brothers handle all this?
Well, my dad knew. Just he died before I came out, and they knew. There were periods where my parents, they saw the pain that it was causing me. They saw how I'd be hiding in the back of the closet, just beside myself in confusion and pain. But my brothers, it was just a white elephant. It was just something you did not talk about. That's not really, oh, you're just confused. You don't really, And so my three older brothers, they just kind of avoided me. They didn't. It was almost as if I grew up in a single childhood, a single family as a single child. And then I had a younger brother that was, like I say, 5.5 years younger, and I had to keep it from him just because he was so impressionable. So there was responsibility. They didn't like it when I came out. One of them was all gung ho and has since turned quite, antagonistic to the point where he won't talk with me anymore. And then another brother told me that I was bringing shame to the family. And another brother said, you do this, I'll come up there and I'll kill you. And then the younger brother, he really is not mentally stable. Mm-hmm. He could be very, very happy and sweet, but if you don't give him what he wants, if you don't agree with him on a lot of what he says, he can turn very harsh in no time at all.
Man, it's got to feel like you're isolated in a family like that. I don't.
Oh yeah.
Must be tough.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like I said before, you've got to look at your circumstance with open eyes, and, if you're handed lemons, you make lemonade. I saw where I wasn't getting involved in any of the real family things. I wasn't getting any support from the family. And when my younger brother was born, all the attention turned to him, and none of it was on me. And I was free to pretty much go anywhere I wanted to. So I'd hop on my bicycle and I would be gone from 6 a.m. In the summer times, I'd be gone from 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, just riding around.
I miss those days. We did that when we were a kid.
Yeah, I was all by myself. I just, I got to go out and find my own fantasy world and pretend I was who I was, and
Yeah. Now you said that you played high school sports and everything, but your heart wasn't really into it, right?
Well, I was conflicted. I mean, there was a part of me that loved running into people and playing football and jumping higher and faster, grabbing a rebound in basketball. Those were the two sports I played, and I love that, but the cultural mindset was so testosterone filled that it was difficult. I ended up, every team I ever got on, I ended up leaving, just because it became such a conflict within. And it's funny though. I mean, even though I removed myself from the team, I'm an artist. At that time, I was hoping to be an artist, but it was just something that I was doing. But I would go out to the practice field and I would sketch and draw the players, the people that were on my team that I was no longer a part of, and I would draw their pictures for them, and I would give them to them, and their moms would frame them and stuff, and so it was conflicting. I mean, I was a conflicted, ambivalent child. One thing I'll say about being transgender is that at a very early age, it causes critical thinking to become engaged in the thought process, and where things are not simple. Things are not black and white. Like, regular people would never question their gender. Why do I feel this way and stuff? But when you're transgendered, you can get really critical of yourself and get into critical thinking where you're trying to analyze things. Being left-handed also does that. Everybody had a desk where you had to reach around and your back got out of whack in the middle of every classroom, and because you're left-handed and everybody else had a right-handed desk, so you are constantly having to re-engineer things that have been engineered for a right-handed world. Well, being transgendered is somewhat like that on a different kind of a scale.
Now you tried to have some female relationships, but that didn't go too well. But you eventually made a decision to get married. Even though your wife knew about this, right? What happened with that?
Well, yes, I told her before we were married. I think that for the most part, we were both really, really hoping that things would change when I got married. Mm-hmm. We both really desired that. I'll tell you something. I might catch flack for this from somebody else, but this is me. When people come out as transgendered and stuff, part of my heart sinks because it's no fun. People might think, oh, you're looking for attention. Not the kind of attention that I got, and but we hoped that it would go away, and she knew, but I don't think she knew a whole lot more than I did, and it didn't leave, it didn't leave. But we went into couples counseling, and we took each other seriously, and we respected each other, and we went into couples counseling, and the counselor told us, she goes, you guys, she goes, I counsel a lot of people, but you two have everything nailed down with the exception of one thing. And that was our intimate relationship. Right. Intimate physical relationship. And I'm just so thankful that I had that relationship with her, because what it proved to me, and this was very important later on, was that I was a worthy human being and I could be in a relationship and contribute to that relationship in a positive way and be, it proved to me that there was nothing really wrong with me, that I did have a lot of good there, and when you're isolated and suicidal, people don't remember that, they don't remember how good they could be, you've got to reach for what you've got to hold on to the things that validate you in life, and give credit to where credit's due. And I have to give credit to Kathy, was my wife's name. She's an incredible person, and we do a lot for each other even to this day.
So you said you became suicidal. Is that what you talked about?
Yeah, I have been. We after we divorced, we separated, and we had a separation that was pretty much a joke. But then she reconnected with a high school boyfriend, and then it became more imperative that I become less and less, And so he moved out to California, which is where we were living, and then they moved back to North Carolina, which is where he lived. And I was pretty much on my own for a while. And when you become transgender, you have this person that's never been self-actualized, this person that's never been fulfilled. I was a 41-year-old man, and I was trying to bring this girl part of me out, this female part of me, the female that I was, that I perceived myself to be. And that female really hadn't matured past puberty too much, never experienced any of the social stuff that young girls go through. And so I would meet people, and in California, I was in the Bay Area, so there's a lot of support, but I would meet people and they would be very, very supportive, but at the same time, I couldn't form any solid, meaningful, and intimate relationships with people that I actually felt a great deal of affection for. It was always at hand's length, be a casual friend, an acquaintance and stuff. But anytime I would, hope that something would develop, it just evaporated, and you knock on the door and no one answers, but you see someone looking out the curtain, and it's like, you know, so that was what led to the depression that eventually led to suicidal thinking and stuff. It's like I'm alone, and no one's gonna miss me. Doesn't matter if I'm here or there. No one's gonna even know. So
finally in 1996, you made that decision to transition into a female. Can you talk about that time in life?
Well, Kathy and I had split up, and she had moved away, and this thing had followed me my whole life. It had been there in the back of my mind. I would just find some girls enchanting, and I wasn't wanting to sleep with them. I was wanting to be them, kind of like I want to experience life the way they experience life, And so I said, nothing's stopping you, nothing is stopping you. You can do what you want. And I did a little research, and somebody said, well, you could go to Thailand to do this. And I said, Thailand? And they said, no, really, the doctor over there is the guy who's teaching everybody else in the world how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You serious? So I did the research, and I found out that it was the fact, and so I bought a two-way ticket to Bangkok, and I went over, had a hotel rental for 2 weeks, 10 days actually, and got there, had the surgery, and then had 10 days or 8 days of rehab. Got on the plane, stitches in my where, and came home.
And what kind of reaction did you get from people?
Well, when I was over there, Kathy and my mother, they called. It was the middle of the night for them, and they called and they said, we don't want to lose you. We want you in our lives. And then they were, from that point on, they were with me. I didn't have to worry about their friendship anymore. But I thought I was going to be by myself. But in fact, I was originally going to be a Catherine, and Catherine Dupois Balek, and that was Dupois is George Sand's name, and George Sand was her pen name, but she was a French author, a woman who couldn't get published as a woman, so she had to take on a male pseudonym. So she was my hero. And anyway.
Did you feel more complete?
After the surgery?
Yeah,
I felt
authentic. Yeah.
I felt I was able to express who I was able to let Morrigan go, let her set her free. And I talked about, I wrote myself letters, Morgan wrote Ken letters and Ken wrote Morgan letters, Ken was my name before. And we talked about the future, and we just reassured each other that we would be there, to both of us. It wasn't like schizophrenia or anything like that, but it was just the reality. I mean, even when I was transgendered, I never viewed myself as a woman. I viewed myself as a transgendered woman. And when I would meet people,
what does that mean? Can you explain what that means?
Well, there's new terminology in public. Cisgendered would be someone who's biologically a woman, and transgendered would be someone who has transitioned into womanhood. So there's two types of women now, apparently. And so I would make sure that people knew that I was transgendered, because I wanted to, number one, give them an example of what being around a transgendered person really is, instead of, the joke that they would always hear, the Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, or, any other number of fantastic movies that they would see, and think, wow, that's really flamboyant, or really dramatic, and stuff. Now it's just people, it's just people, and a lot of times really damaged people. This has a hell of a way of taking a toll on a person's spirit, and it's humbling.
Now, we talked about before the show started about managing expectations. What challenges did you have?
Well, when things started to go south, I started to look at things differently. I started to look at things. I've always been an empathetic person, which is probably what put me on the other side of the street to begin with. And I started looking at, there were so many people that were just absolutely wonderful to me. So supportive, so kind, but even so, it was difficult for them. And I knew it, and I wanted more than anything to connect with people, to have that soul to soul relationship that you can get with a good friend, a close friend, a trusted friend, and I knew what I wasn't getting with being totally out and stuff, So I dialed it back, and I would still get, I would wear less flamboyant clothes, I worked jobs where it wasn't office work, and then even when it was office work later on, I still tried to maintain a very low profile as far as my dressing and stuff goes. And people could see the ambiguity in my nature, but it wasn't nearly as threatening to them, and it wasn't really as much a cause for ridicule. And so I dialed it back, and it's called managing your expectations, and you realize that, okay, so I'm really attracted to this person, and they slam the door in your face, and you walk back and you say, well, that didn't feel good, and so, I asked myself, what happened, and why doesn't it, what do I need to do, well, I quickly, after 3 or 4 or 5 of those situations, I just said, okay, you shouldn't expect that. You shouldn't expect it, shouldn't hope for it. It's like, when they would say after a breakup, you say, well, when you stop thinking about your ex, that's when everything will happen for you,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, and so I just went around trying to be as good of a person as I could be, and manage my expectations in that I wasn't expecting much of anything, but you don't stop giving, You don't stop putting yourself out there. You don't stop giving heartfelt advice to people. You just don't stop being a friend. You just try to understand what the people are going through, and see if you can't make adjustments to make it easier for them. And I don't want anybody to fall,
Yeah.
but I always wanted them to understand. And
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
important.
I don't like to interrupt you or anything. We have just a few more minutes to go here, but I want to talk about a couple of things. First thing, I guess, is briefly, can you tell about what happened with the pig Skinner episode?
Oh, the pig skinners, yes.
Yeah.
So it was probably the late '90s, and I went to a concert in San Francisco, and there had been some sexual assaults in the area there. I lived in Oakland, and so I took Bart over to the city to see the concert, and Bart is the subway, so the Bay Area subway, and I coming home, I sat down in my chair, and I'm all dressed. I have a long black skirt on and a black, I'm kind of, doing whatever I was doing. And these two guys, they got on the train, and they sat in a seat that was facing me. They had that kind of subway type of seating, where you sit in all different directions. So they were facing me. I could see them whispering back and forth to each other, and I kind of got a bad feeling about it, and so I moved two cars away, and when I got off the train at my stop in downtown Oakland, they were at the other end, and I got out and I looked back, and they were both looking out the door. And when I got off, they got off too. And I thought, okay, well, when the sexual assaults started happening, and a number of my friends have been fatally attacked, and not friends, but acquaintances and stuff, people that I knew in the community. It's a dangerous situation for transgender people. I saw them, I was walking along. I had armed myself with two, what they call pig skinners, which is basically a short knife with a very sharp blade, and it has a hole in the shank where you can put your index finger.
I've seen those, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had two of those, and I was walking down the street, and I saw one of these guys come out ahead of me. He had run up ahead and then run the block, and then I turned around and the other guy was behind me. And so I said, okay. And I backed into a doorway at a business, and I just waited. And I had a backpack on, and I put it in front of me, and I put my knives in my hands, and I kind of held them behind the backpack, and they both walked into the doorway at the same time. And I just pulled my hands out, and I said, do you really want to do this, And they just both backed away and walked away. And somebody was going to get hurt, If they had a gun, I would be dead,
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, you got to be ready. You got to be able to look over your shoulder. It's very, very upsetting. I got home and I called the police, and they said, well, you could have really gotten hurt. And I said, yeah, I know. He said, but you probably did the right thing by trying to throw a little shade back at them,
Now this happened you said late 1990s, right?
Yeah, it was probably 97, 98,
Yeah.
99, somewhere in that time.
So, but you stayed as a transgender for, gosh, until 2010. Then you decided not to dress up as a woman anymore. How did that come about? Is that about right?
When it was right in California, it was during the time when they were trying to approve gay marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a lot of people riled up. you know, and I would be on public transportation, and people would just, the strangers would come up to me and start giving me shade, and I'd just say, I think you really need to get off the bus right now. You know, you really need to go. And what was really gratifying about that was I would take the same bus every day, and the people on the bus, they all knew me. They had all seen Miss Morrigan Balek on the bus. I would read, or I would, you know, chat with someone, you know, and laugh and talk and stuff, and basically be a human being, to their surprise, you know. And they were all very tense, but when people were deriding me and stuff, and you know, they would call me an abomination and stuff, and it was like, yeah, like your opinion means something to me, you know. But you know, there were times when I thought that it was going to come to physical, you know, and I wasn't going to back away from them, you know. They're just gonna. Sad thing is that a lot of times when that happens, it's not one against one; it's 1 against 5 or something like that, where really the person doesn't stand a chance. But so I got tired of the hassle there, and I started riding a bicycle, which meant I really couldn't wear skirts anymore. You know, I was never a provocative skirt wearer anyway. You know, I was more modest in my, you know, tried to be contemporary, but more modest, you know, dressing up like my mom.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of black in my wardrobe. But so I would throw on a pair of overalls and put on a football jersey, and, you know, ride through. We had to ride through the rough part of town and stuff in Oakland, and believe me, there's some rough parts. And you know, I actually got to know quite a bit of the homeless people there, and became quite close to them and stuff, and helped them when I could, you know, and became kind of a symbiotic relationship where, you know, they would put the word out, you know, Morgan's cool, don't mess with them, don't mess with them, you know. And so that's kind of why I just let it go. And besides, I had reached a point where my expectations were managed. I realized what I was going to get and wasn't going to get. And I never did this for anybody else but myself.
Right.
You know, this was just something where I had to go through. I wrote on my Facebook page, I says, you know, looking back, you know, I think I could have been the person that they always wanted me to be, the guy that they wanted me to be. I said, but I don't think I could have ever come to that conclusion or the realization without taking this road less traveled. It answered all the questions for me. I don't regret it once, you know. It's something that you've got to become your true self. You know, you gotta reach down inside you, and don't be afraid to pull out what's really there, you know, and you've got to look at the world with compassion, and you know, you just got to have a lot of you got to look at people with your heart, and realize that everybody's going through something. You know, everybody's got a cross to carry or something, you know, and you know, things get tough, but it's not the things that happen to you that make you, it's how you respond to them. You know,
Right.
if you respond with a positive attitude, and you know, oh darn, I've been given lemons, well, I have a really good recipe for lemonade, you know, and doggone it, that lemonade's pretty good, you know. You know, empathy is a very important word in my life.
Yeah, you show a lot of that. Unfortunately, this show just goes way too quickly, and I apologize for not being able to get some of the things I want to talk about, Morgan. But I'm so grateful that you decided to come on my show, because I've seen you in a different light, and I've known you for a little bit, and I'm just really proud to be your friend. And it's been a great journey. I appreciate you so much being on my show.
All right, look forward to seeing you around.
All right, so as I end all my shows, I want everyone to smile infectiously, laugh genuinely, love unconditionally,
Absolutely.
Live courageously. I believe in all of you. And by the way, if you guys are still interested in looking at watching my YouTube videos, you can on my YouTube channel. You can go to lifewithoutlimitsshow.com, and you will see there, and you can either watch my show or watch my shows on YouTube, or you can listen to my shows on iHeartRadio and all the other platforms. So again, thank you so much for coming on my show, Morgan, and let's stay in touch.
Shall
Have
do.
a great week. Have a great week, folks.